Well, welcome. My name is Ross Sandler. I'm director of the Center for New York City Law and a professor of law here at New York Law School, and I welcome you to our new building. It's been open 4 weeks, and are you having trouble hearing? They're having trouble hearing. Could you please work on that? This is the building's been open for 4 weeks with our new students, incoming class. They're finding the classrooms are wonderful, and this is, I think, one of the first, if not the first event in this new event space that we are inaugurating, and I hope that you will enjoy it. Well, thank you. The building is quite wonderful. It's 5 stories high and 4 stories down. It's actually a 9-story building that conforms with the zoning up, and we went as far down as we could go. If people would like to see more of the building, I'd be happy to have a tour after, take people around after to show you some of the classrooms and the library, which are quite beautiful. The students are finding it wonderful for studying and for learning law, and we are very proud of it. I want to welcome you all to, this is the first breakfast of this year. We'd like to thank Con Edison and Verizon, the law firm of Greenberg Traurig, and the Murray Goodgold Foundation, which have supported these breakfasts now for many years, long as 15 years. This is a very long-running series now, and we couldn't do it without the financial support from these people who allow us to have a free breakfast and to do it in this manner. So we thank them. Today, well, that's good. We should applaud them. We're honored to have Jeanette Sadik-Khan, Commissioner of DOT, to speak to us today. When I looked at the people who RSVP'd, a cross-section of people in government, out of government, interested in government, from business, all sorts of different areas, and what that told me is that Commissioner Sadik-Khan is really cutting a very large swath across the city. She has people sitting where people were driving. She has people riding bicycles where people were parking. She has all of us looking at what used to be black asphalt is now green space. She's planting things. She's moving things. She has really made a big difference in the city. And it's quite wonderful to see a commissioner taking on such responsibility and having such an immediate and important impact. She comes to a position from long experience in transportation, working in Washington in the Transit Administration in New York City here in the office or the Mayor's Office of Transportation, and having been a senior vice president at Parsons Brinckerhoff. So she brings all that experience, all that energy, and doing a superb job for our city. I welcome Commissioner Sadik-Khan.
Thanks, Ross. It's wonderful to be here this morning. I don't know what it says about the eclectic group of people that RSVP'd or the fact that people really do like the free breakfast. So I think it's great. I'm really honored to be here to inaugurate the new space. It's really, really beautiful. And the New York City Department of Transportation used to be located right across the street. So I sort of feel like it's fitting because we dealt with the construction impacts of the building of this building for 2 years. So it's nice to see what it looks like from the inside, as people from New York City DOT would know. But it's a really great opportunity to be here today to talk about some of the sustainable transportation programs that we're implementing in New York City and sort of show how New York is now on the cutting edge of transportation programs and policies. I also really want to acknowledge the fact that we are able to do what we're able to do because of the leadership and the administration of Michael Bloomberg. And he is an amazing man. He's a terrific boss, and they're amazing commissioners that I have the pleasure of working with, one of whom is here today, Bob Tierney, who is from the Landmarks Commission. And I also want to acknowledge that this is a group effort at the Department of Transportation, and it's made possible by all the great people that are at the Department of Transportation. So the folks that are from DOT that are here, I want to raise their hand. So these are the people that we should be really thanking. So what we're doing at the Department of Transportation and how this affects you. What is the theory behind some of the stuff that we're doing? Both in our emphasis on sustainable mobility and creating streets that function as places, we've really shifted the city's approach from treating our streets as utilitarian corridors and moved it to a view of looking at them as the valuable spaces that they really are, places that are important for public transit corridors and for meeting one another and again, looking at social exchange. As you know, in 2007, Mayor Bloomberg launched his Plan YC agenda, which grew from a planning exercise to see how the city could thrive over the next 25 years, and it concluded that the really best way to do that was to reduce the city's environmental impacts and improve the quality of life in New York City. That was the best way to secure the city's future. And in fact, Plan YC showed that continuing population growth had big, not only national, but global benefits, because having 1 million more people here, rather than having them sprawled out in other places in the country, and here where we live transit-oriented, energy-efficient lives, is the best way for us to deal with some of the carbon impacts that we see going on. In fact, New Yorkers have 1/3 the carbon footprint of the average American. So if you really want to do something to save the planet, you have to get all your friends and family to move to New York City. So, and you can see that quite vividly here. If you take a look at this chart on the top band, we get huge avoided sprawl benefits by attracting 1 million more people here than between now and 2030. And the challenge is to make a 9 million person New York City more livable and more attractive than it is with fewer people today. And among other things, that means a new transportation policy. Plan YC talked about the importance of expanding mass transit. It talked about the importance of expanding our cycling programs and congestion busting initiatives like congestion pricing. I'm pretty sure that everybody in the room knows what happened with congestion pricing. It enjoyed majority support among the public. It did pass the City Council and was defeated, as you know, by the New York State Legislature. I think it is worth noting, and Hillary Ring is here today from the MTA. Where's Hillary? He was here. I guess he went to the bathroom. But the issue of transportation funding has not been resolved beyond the next year or two. So we're in a holding pattern right now, and we really do need to find out how it is that we're going to secure funding for the MTA's capital program. We at New York City DOT elaborated on the transportation themes in the Mayor's Plan YC initiative, and we came up with a strategic plan, Sustainable Streets, which for the first time has a written, clear strategic plan that details exactly what our policies, programs, and visions are, and importantly includes benchmarks to hold us accountable for what it is that we're going to deliver to the people of the City of New York. Our transportation strategy is really based on using our streets more efficiently. I really look at the streets of New York City as the tracks for the New York City's bus system. And so, again, building in new mobility to that street network is really important. So we're working with the Transit Authority right now on a rapid bus system that we're calling Select Bus. We've got 2 early routes in operation right now, one on Fordham Road in the Bronx, the BX12, one on 34th Street. I think of them as sort of down and dirty. They're the beginning of what we need to see done in terms of moving buses more effectively through the system. They've got simple innovations like off-board fare collection, transit signal priority, giving buses the green light and holding it for them longer, allowing boarding on the front and the back of the bus, dedicated lanes. You know, all of those pieces, particularly delays associated with getting on the bus, scrambling for change in your purse or your Metro card to get on, is responsible for 1/3 of the delay in travel times. And congestion on the streets is another 1/3. And so we need to do everything we can to get people to move more efficiently and faster through the network. We've got the distinction of having the largest bus fleet in North America and the slowest bus speeds. So we simply have to do better in that regard. On the BX12, we had travel times improved by 30%. We attracted 5,000 new riders to the system. And this is sort of remarkable. I think it's like once in a, I don't know, millennium. 98% of transit riders on this route were satisfied. So it's a good beginning, and I think it's a good down payment. It's certainly a lot easier to build a new bus capacity into the system than new rail capacity. And we've got 4 routes that we're working on right now. You'll see the next one on 1st and 2nd Avenue. coming to a station near you soon. We are going to be implementing 8 to 10 more robust routes, full bus rapid transit routes, over the course of the next 10 years. So I expect them, this is the master plan, I expect the routes to go from looking like this, which is fine. I think it's an attractive terracotta little paint job, and the little rumble strips to remind people not to get into the bus lane. But we're going from something like this to something like this, where we really have dedicated lanes and they are reserved exclusively for buses. So we're also, I mentioned while congestion pricing is on hiatus, we're still doing everything we can on the pricing front. We began a pilot program in the West Village and in Park Slope to test the effectiveness of charging higher rates for parking during the peak hours. And the idea is that by charging increased rates during peak periods of demand, there'll be less meter feeding, there'll be more turnover, less cruising, less double parking, and less congestion. So we think that this idea has large potential across the city of New York. Cycling serves another important part of our mobility network, and it's great for the great many short trips that are in New York City. Over 54% of all the trips in New York City are under 2 miles. And so we think cycling has a really important role to play in dealing with those trips. And it also adds, cycling also adds a new visual dimension to our streets. We recently completed 200 miles of new bike lanes in the city of New York over the last 3 years. Yeah. It was very impressive, incredible team at DOT, and we're building this into the network, and we think it's got potentially huge returns. You take a look at what happens in other cities around the world. Take a look at Berlin. Berlin is half the size of New York City. It's got a terrific transit system, and 10% of Berliners commute to work by bike. So they've built it, and they're coming. So we're starting to build out. You can see from this map, we're really building out the denser. We've actually got. The network itself is very dense in certain parts of town, and we are building a very interconnected network. And the lanes are starting to look like they should. Paul Steely-White's here from Transportation Alternatives. He's been a great partner in helping us get there from here. And you can see it. And we've seen a huge increase. From 2007 to 2008, we saw a 35% increase just 1 year alone in commuting to work. And if you take a look at the numbers, we have more people commuting to work from Brooklyn than the entire city of Portland, Oregon, or the entire city of San Francisco, California. So it's a lot of people that we've got out there. We think that one of the key innovations that will continue to drive the increase in cycling is protected bike lanes. Some of you saw the first of the kind on 9th Avenue that we did in 2007, and we've now paired it with this lane on 8th Avenue. We flipped basically the parking lane and the bike lane. It's much more comfortable to ride in. How many people have gone on the 8th or 9th Avenue lanes? Oh, that's pretty good. So get the rest of them out there. And even on 9th Avenue, beyond just what it does in terms of cycling, it really improves the safety of many of the parts of town where we put these kinds of innovations in. There's measurable success in reducing the amount of injuries that we're seeing in the crashes on 9th Avenue. We've developed a narrower version of this plan on Grand Street in Soho, and we're going to be testing a two-way design on the Brooklyn waterfront later this summer. The City Council, I don't know how many people know this, but the City Council just recently passed a landmark piece of legislation that was signed by Mayor Bloomberg, which requires commercial office buildings with freight elevators to allow bikes inside. And we think this is going to be a big step in increasing the number of people that are commuting to work by bike. City Planning a couple years ago did a survey to see what the barriers were to commuting, and the number one reason people are not riding to work is because they are worried that their bike won't be there at the end of the day when they go to get it. So we think that this will remove what has been an artificial ceiling on bike commuting in the city. We are currently working right now on guidance and outreach plans. This program takes effect in December when tenants can ask building owners to create bike access plans. So we're developing this now and outreach materials to help building managers meet these requests. The next piece of our cycling strategy may well be a public bike share system. I think it would be great to see yellow checkered bikes take their place next to yellow checkered cabs. And, you know, it's worked in a lot of major cities. There are some 25 cities around the world that are implementing bike share programs. Most people have heard about the program in Paris, the Velib program, which saw a 7-fold increase in biking 1 year after they put the program in. They now have a 4% share commuting to work on bike, and we're starting to see that in Montreal. London just went public with a new bike share system. I went up to Montreal to see the new system that they have up there. It's amazing. It's solar powered. It's wireless, so you don't have to dig under the streets. So we're seeing a lot of innovation in this market area, and we're going to be taking a look at that. Part of ensuring the city's future growth and improving the quality of life is using our streets as the valuable public spaces that they are. And many places in the city are essentially over-paved. And we can rationalize the street capacity on the streets of New York without unduly affecting traffic. So we're transforming pavement to plazas, as Ross mentioned, in a lot of parts of town, and we're really building support for the city's greening policies. We've got a rapid implementation team that's working on this. We can literally move pavement into plazas in a matter of weeks, as you've probably seen. You can do a lot with a paint can and a paintbrush, and we're doing that right now. And again, eventually the capital program is going to catch up, but right now I don't think that members of the public are making the distinction. They're just happy to have some spaces to be in. This is largely a city without seats, and so to have a place to rest, catch up with a friend. Mayor Bloomberg's Plan YC initiative calls for every New Yorker to be within a 10-minute walk of a park or public space, and this is very much a down payment on making that real. So people are hungry for it. The people take over these spaces almost instantly. You know, you put up the orange barrels, as Ross would know, and they just, you know, it's like a Star Trek episode where they dematerialize, you know, out of, I don't know where they came from, but they weren't there before and they're suddenly there now. We also, last fall we put out this document, World Class Streets, which really documents the need for more welcoming streets and public spaces in the city. And it catalogs our policy efforts in this area. Our streets work because they are so multidimensional. There's so much going on a busy city street. And we think that when you allow some of the less traditional parts of the network to flourish, you get some really interesting places. So these are a couple of the examples of what we're doing. I expect that some of them are pretty familiar to you. This is in the Meatpacking District. How many people have seen that? Oh, great. I love this audience. This is another area that we're working on in the Bronx at the Hub, 149th Street and 3rd Avenue. We think that it's really important to do these quick projects because they yield not only quick benefits, but they give reality to the notion of a greener city. And I think the public really needs to see and touch and feel change to believe in it. And New Yorkers, I think, are really tired of waiting around for plans that take, you know, years, generations. Henry Stearns here, he knows how long it can take to get some of these capital projects done. So we're not doing things just in Manhattan. As I mentioned, this is the most complicated and busy intersection in the Bronx, and we completed this last year. But we are seeking to showcase our approach in the heart of the city. Last year, we took the Plaza program to a new level. We transformed sections of Broadway that had been relatively lifeless, Madison Square and Broadway Boulevard. And those projects served as real trial runs for a more ambitious corridor study, strategy that the mayor unveiled last winter that you probably heard about. How many people have heard of Broadway, Green Light for Broadway? Okay, I'd be shocked. How many people didn't hear about Green Light for Broadway? That's really what I should do. Oh, come on. So we recently completed the work on Broadway from 59th to 23rd Street, and it's conceived around the win-win notion that if you improve, we can improve traffic flow through the heart of Midtown by simplifying the intersections at Times and Herald Square, and we can add some almost 3 acres of new public space and give some real breathing and walking room in some of the most iconic, famous places in the world. And as you know, Broadway, you know, the traffic grid was set up some 200 years ago, and the grid system is really the most effective way to move vehicles through the network. But the only irregular route that cuts this diagonal swath through the city, through Manhattan, is Broadway. and it was left in. It's kind of this pre-colonial footpath, and it's, you know, there's probably been congestion on Broadway for 200 years. You know, probably as long as there's been traffic engineers, there's been, you know, congestion on Broadway. So the mayor asked us to take a big picture look and see what we could do to relieve the congestion and the bottlenecks in this part of town. And, you know, before people had tried tweaking, you know, lights and turn bays here and there, but it wasn't working. And so we took a big picture look and really looked to reconnect 7th Avenue for the first time and really have the grid function the way that it wants to. And not surprisingly, it's working. We're so far so good. People came out, you know, I don't know, how many people have been up to Broadway and seen the new Times Square? Do you like it? Yeah? Great. If you want to write letters to that effect, that's fine. So, you know, it's working well. We were seeing a lot of the choke points relieved. Pedestrians are happy. I thought it was actually a measure of success. Ross would find this funny. You know, usually people, you know, there are 8.2 million New Yorkers. Everybody's got a view. I think there are 8.2 million traffic engineers, actually, after 2 years here. And everybody has an opinion of things. But, you know, the debate focused less on what we were doing on the traffic side and more on the dingy chairs that we put in, you know? The debate was all about the chairs. And so I thought, that's great. You know, that's going to be my new strategy. I'm going to put out, like, chairs from Target, like, every time I do a traffic project, because it seems to be what people focus on. So it's working. 6th Avenue is clearly working better, where we took Broadway out of the system. We simplified the intersection, so you've got 3 signalized, you've gone from a 3 signalized intersection to 2. That traffic used to back up, as all of you know, to the Flower District, and now it's the platoons of cars are moving through. So what we're doing right now is we're in the process of collecting data. I work for a data-driven mayor. He makes bold decisions as long as he's convinced that the data supports it. And so this has been a pilot program, and so we're collecting data on you know, traffic volumes, on economic performance, and on safety, and we will present this report to the mayor at the end of the year, and at that time he will make the decision whether to keep it, to tweak it, to terminate it. We're hoping that it continues to perform the way it looks like it is. Even in the pilot phase, though, we believe that it's important to bring interesting street treatments to projects and to sort of welcome people and to set these new spaces off from the travel lanes. And so you can see that we've got this poppy little design up there, the sort of psychedelic street treatments that we've got up there. And that's, of course, Herald Square. DOT not only runs streets, but we also have jurisdiction over a great many facades and surfaces, and we're responsible for a lot of stuff that you see on the sidewalk. And we're using this fact to bring new visual life to our streetscapes. So, you know, we've transformed gray, ugly-looking fences. Tat Phu Tan did a great project with some school kids in Brooklyn, where they not only learned about healthy eating by picking fruits and vegetables that they liked, took the color of that fruit or vegetable, and then transposed it onto the fence. Kathleen Grimm is here from the Department of Education, and so, you know, there's been some really great partnerships that we're working on with kids, particularly in the area of urban art, and it's been really terrific to work with DOE on those kinds of projects. And we've also got some whimsical bike racks designed by David Byrne. That's the sort of hipster guitar in hipster Williamsburg. There's a high heel shoe that we've got in front of Bergdorf. I mean, it's been sort of fun to play with art and transportation. Who knew? We're also doing a lot of work to up our game on our street furniture. I think actually the new bus shelters and the automatic pay toilets in the newsstand really are almost jewelry, you know, fabulous jewelry on the streets of New York. And we have a new bike rack that was part of a design competition we ran with the Cooper Hewitt Museum. It's beautiful. You're starting to see them now. They're going into production, and they should be on a street near you soon. We also don't believe that streets need to be used the same way at all times. And so we launched Summer Streets last year. We closed a big swath of Park Avenue from the Brooklyn Bridge up to 72nd Street for 3 consecutive Saturdays, so people could come out and run and cycle and just enjoy the wonder of New York City without cars. How many people did Summer Streets? Oh, that's great. We also had cha-cha lessons, we had kickboxing lessons, you know, yoga lessons. I did a kickboxing lesson the first year I did it with the deputy mayor that I report to, which was very satisfying. So everybody got into the act when we launched this. We had Lance Armstrong, we had Jay-Z. It was very popular. We also expanded it this year with something we're calling weekend walks in all 5 boroughs, 14 locations where people came out and, could enjoy their streets in a whole new way. Finally, I want to talk about New York City DOT's latest major publication, our Street Design Manual. This is the work of 2 years of work of 11 city agencies that came together to look at coming up with a consistent approach to our streets. How many people in this room worked on this book? Bob, I know, landmarks. Well, it was an incredible process, and what we're doing is again bringing more creativity. It's a guidebook so that we're to people in the public and private sector, basically anybody that touches the streets, and so we're bringing more creativity and variety to our streetscapes. And it acknowledges that we have a very diverse set of uses of our streets. And so we formally standardize how it is that we're, the innovations that we brought to the streets of New York, and it really will have everybody playing from the same playbook. So as you can see, whether it's the innovations on bus lanes or the innovations on busways, it really is a detailed look at what is appropriate, tailored to local conditions. So, and the other piece I think is important is that it allows for a pre-approved set of materials beyond the standard concrete, asphalt, and steel. So I think that's really important because it not only creates a clear set of expectations among all shareholders and agencies, but it will allow us to proceed faster on project scoping and project approvals, as Frank McCardle would know. So we're doing everything we can to make our streets work better, make our streets more beautiful, and improve the delivery of those streets in an effective and streamlined way. It's really a new DNA for the streets of New York, and I think it will mean that we will have world-class streets that are worthy of New York City, but also that we will have more shovels in the ground faster. And I think that's only a good thing as we look to generate as many jobs as possible and prime the city for its next wave of growth. So that's an overview of the new types of streets and the transportation corridors that we're implementing. There's even more out there. I hope you get out there and get a chance to enjoy it. And it's been an honor to speak with you this morning. So thank you.
Well, thank you. That was really quite a wonderful talk. I don't usually do a comment after the talk, but I'd like to do, no, not a rebuttal. But it's interesting to me to hear this, and a lot of the people here have been around a long time. I think of Henry and I did Green Streets in 1987 or something like that. But the failures earlier on of things like Madison Mall and the bike lanes came in a city where we didn't have the sense of safety, and you didn't have the sense of wanting to live in the city. And what's today, after 20 years of really efforts on safety, the city has become a place where people want to be outdoors in the city. And what's wonderful about what you're doing is you've captured the moment. And so there's just not the kind of opposition that we faced in the years that we were doing things like this, or when Mayor Lindsay tried the Madison Mall effort to take back street space. So I really congratulate you and Mayor Bloomberg for seeing that this is an opportunity where the public will support innovations like this and just go full speed ahead. So let's take some questions. There are microphones, and please come up and introduce yourself. Roger Hers. I will introduce you.
My hat is TIME, an acronym for To Improve Municipal Efficiency. Advocate of congestion pricing since the mid-'60s, before E-ZPass transponders, so it's pretty crude. Disappointed the state legislature did not act April 7th of last year, and now increasingly thankful they did not, because that was a very low level of pricing, and amazing things are happening in this country and worldwide, and I'm confident this will happen in New York in the not-too-distant future. My question this morning is on bicycle transportation. On July 1st last year, the New York Times had a quote from a DOT spokesperson that it is a violation of a city ordinance to lock a bike to anything other than a bicycle rack. And I emailed you asking if that was an error, and if not, please promptly advise details on ordinance language, date enacted, and administration plans to seek repeal. and I've done 2 follow-up emails, but no response.
Why don't you go sit with our general counsel, Phil Demashek, and he will work it through with you. Thank you.
That's a good answer for you. On this side, yes.
Yeah, my name is Mark Turner from LaGuardia Community College. This might be a redundant question, but famous New Yorker said people come to New York to sell things. What do you, in the Department of Transportation, have any effect on the vehicular traffic in this city? They're destroying the roads, they're destroying the bridges. About a month ago, a little boy got run over and killed up in East Harlem. I mean, are you running ad campaigns? Are you doing outreach? Too many cars, too fast on the streets. What is the department? What effect the Department of Transportation is having about this?
It's a really important question. We're really implementing a very different vision about transportation in New York City, which I went through a little bit today in terms of how it is that we're looking at our streets. We need to do as much as we can to improve safety on the streets of New York, as you mentioned, and we're making some we're having some success. The traffic fatalities are the lowest level they've been since 1912, since the city started keeping records, and that's great. But we need to do a lot more. So we've done a lot of work on a program targeting our most vulnerable pedestrians, seniors and kids. We probably have the largest program on traffic calming in the United States today with our Safe Routes to Schools program, traffic calming around schools to make it safe where kids are walking around, and similarly targeting areas where there are high concentrations of seniors, focusing on a program to improve safety around senior areas. But it's an extremely important issue. We're doing a lot on the campaign front, and you mentioned something that's extremely important. We need to do as much as we can to educate people about how dangerous it is when cars speed on the streets of New York. We've just licensed from the UK a program that it's a very visceral program. It's a picture of a kid, half of his face basically destroyed, based on a car going 40 miles an hour, and the rest, his face is there, at a lower speed. And those will be running in the spring. And we've got a big DWI campaign that's going to be kicking off, also very visceral, very arresting, associated with Thanksgiving. And so we're doing everything we can. We spent $2.5 million, more than ever spent in the history of the department, to do everything we can to educate people about respecting one another's rights on the road, looking out for one another on the road, and it's my top priority. So I thank you for raising it.
Thank you, Richard Jordan, the president of Concerned Citizens Speak. First, congratulations, Ross, on this wonderful facility. Well done. My question is this: did New York City learn anything from the Beijing Olympics and the Beijing Paralympics last year in the way that China was able to move millions of people very fastly and efficiently, quickly and efficiently? Thank you.
Bus rapid transit. They put a huge amount into their bus rapid transit program. I took a page out of that, and I believe that developing a network of surface subways, bus rapid transit, is really what we need to do in the future. And so, sadly, they've moved away from their bicycling tradition and history, and I think that they may come to regret that. But they've got a great bus rapid transit system, and China is really well ahead of the curve, from where we sit today in the United States in terms of the investments that they're making in public transportation. Beijing alone has 10 tunnel boring machines in the ground right now, digging through new routes just in that one city alone. So they're putting all of their eggs into the transit basket, which I think is a great lesson for us here.
Good morning, Commissioner. My name is Sid Miller. Would you be so kind as to share with us the reason why your agency, the Department of Transportation, apparently discriminates against those of us who have made a change in our lifestyle? We've left the prime Upper West Side. We've left the Upper East Side. We've bought a one-family brownstone in, say, Harlem. We've moved our families there. In other words, Commissioner, it appears that if one chooses to live south of 96th Street, the homeowner receives prompt and thorough allocation of services from the DOT. But if, on the other hand, one chooses to reside north of 96th Street, say in Harlem, like I do, the homeowner receives lots of double talk, and nothing more than the leftover scraps from the various city agencies. Any comments, please?
Well, I would have to say that under Mayor Bloomberg, there's been a very concerted effort to respond to public complaints as quickly as possible, and that's really through the 311 system. And so people call in, can write in, and we are all held to very specific standards in terms of how it is and how quickly we get back to people. So the mayor has a dashboard that he gets every week that shows, you know, how different agencies are performing. And so we do everything we can. We are measured by it. We are asked to follow up and do everything we can to ensure that New Yorkers, no matter where you live, no matter who you are, have access to the wide variety of government services, and that they're performed in an effective and quick manner.
Thank you.
Oh, take Henry first.
No,
Henry's up.
no, you're next. You're next, ma'am.
Hi. Good morning, Commissioner. About a year ago, I woke up to a jackhammer in front of my house. It was a DOT contractor destroying 2 pieces of slate that had been about $1,000 each to put in. I've been trying to preserve my slate sidewalks. He managed to make a big hole in 2 pieces of slate and cover it over when he put in the new parking sign with white cement. It's really an eyesore. Can you possibly revise your specifications for putting in those signs to where they have to just drill a hole in the slate and that's perfectly round and fill in with slate matching cement?
We will certainly take a look at that. I have to tell you that most of the sidewalks are not under the jurisdiction in terms of the repair of the City of New York. There is a homeowner's responsibility associated with bringing a contractor in and to do the different work. But we are doing everything we can to make sure that our surfaces and our streetscapes are as beautiful as they can be. So I will work with our folks at the department to see. And again, why don't you spend a little time with Phil Damashek, and we'll see what we can do.
I've already asked him to please look into the specifications. Thank you.
Phil? Okay.
Yeah. Henry Stern, New York Civic. What you say sounds wonderful coming from a commissioner of DOT. Apart from Ross and 1 or 2 others, DOT has in the past been a graveyard for new ideas, particularly its engineering division. And sure, there's a new look at the agency. Now, the bike lanes are very nice, but last night on New York 1, I heard a candidate for mayor, Controller Thompson, say that the Grand Street bike lane, for example, had delayed business and was interfering with the community, and indicated he wanted it removed. Now, what impact do you think it will have on all of your programs and what you're doing if 46 days from today, the election is coming, if Mayor Bloomberg is not reelected?
Well, let me do the first part of the question first, and then the second part of the question after. All of the projects that we do and implement on the streets of New York pass through the community board. And the Grand Street project had overwhelming support by the community board and appears to be working well. Of course, like I mentioned, not everybody, it's not a shock to you, Henry, but not everybody is always happy with all of the changes that you might bring, whether it's a new park, whether it's new trees. As good as they may be, there's always somebody that's a bit grumpy about the change that's happened. So we think that the Grand Street lane is working well. It did have overwhelming support at the community board level. We are building an interconnected network so that we continue to be a world-class city. 25 years from now, when you look out the window, you're happy with what you see. We can't be double-decking our streets, so we have to build in more efficient ways to get around. We've got a crisis of diabetes and obesity. We need to build in active transportation into our network, and we are very mindful. Every time we put in a bike lane or a plaza, we do significant traffic studies to ensure that we are not going to have a deleterious impact on the surrounding neighborhood or streets. That said, we've put an ambitious program. We've got 200 lane miles of bikes. bike routes just finished doing. And so now we've got 420 miles of bike lanes, on-street bike lanes on the streets of New York, added to what we've got in the parks. It's some 600 miles of bike lanes. And so we're starting to have a robust network. It's easy to take pot shots, you know, at programs that are going into place. I think it would be, I personally think it would be a disaster to lose Mike Bloomberg, because I think that he is a terrific mayor. I think he's done a tremendous amount. I think he's sophisticated in terms of what we need to do in balancing the city's economy, and I think that I think the proof is there. And I've worked under other administrations, and the fact that it's really not about the politics and it's all about the projects and getting things done, I feel honored to work there. So obviously I have, you know, I'm biased in this regard, but I think we are lucky to have Mayor Bloomberg as the mayor of the city of New York.
Mm-hmm. Good. Some people are not aware of that, and I appreciate your calling it to their attention. Just last sentence. Ross deserves credit for his participation with DOT, with Parks, during the Koch administration, now part of history, when we both did Green Streets. This was the first time we found a DOT commissioner who was willing to turn traffic islands into green planted spaces. And I want to thank him for that.
Yeah, we stand on the shoulders of those before us.
Hi, my name's Steve Newman. One brief preface, because just to protect myself from everything. I was an assistant transportation commissioner 40 years ago, and actually we created a 5-mile bike lane in Queens at the time, and we got James Stewart Polshek, who's now actually a famous architect, to design a set of bus shelters, which there were about 30 around the city. I preface that because I have an odd question for you. I'm wondering what lessons, I should also preface it, my name is Steve Newman. I have been the chair of Community Board 11 in Northeast Queens, and I guess I'm here to some sense ask you a question representing the outer provinces of the city. What lessons have you learned from your congestion pricing defeat? Because as I sat here this morning, there isn't a thing I heard that I could take back to my community board or any of the other community boards on the perimeter of the city that had anything to do with helping us from a transportation standpoint.
Well,
and that's why and the reason congestion pricing lost is because those elected officials, and at my board, though I was the chair, I was only one of 2 people who voted to support congestion pricing. And the reason is that the perception is that everything is from Manhattan. And I haven't heard a thing you say today that would change that view that the people out where I live have.
Well, the bus rapid transit network that we're talking about, we're trying to build in mobility in places that don't really have it. I mean, it's fine to say, I can't wish people, you know, out of cars and onto buses
if I
and
could
bikes.
just comment, you talked about that.
Let me just finish.
Your demonstration projects were in Manhattan. They weren't in Queens. They weren't in Staten Island.
No, the bus rapid transit network is all 5 boroughs.
Oh, okay. I was talking about your experimental program.
No, I mentioned, I showcased something that we had in the Bronx at the Hub. I didn't do, in the interest of time, I didn't go through the entire portfolio, but we have major projects in all 5 boroughs that we're working on, congestion busting initiatives. We've got, you know, Queens, we had wanted to do a big bus rapid transit program in Merrick, and, you know, they didn't want it. You know, they didn't want the other one in Jamaica. I can't force communities to take these different kinds of projects. So we're doing everything we can. Some areas are not really interested in a rapid bus system or a bike lane system or, you know, any of the other treatments that we're doing. But, you know, in Queens, you know, under Mayor Bloomberg, we're resurfacing the highest number of streets, you know, in generation. We've got 6,000 miles of streets. We're doing 1,000 lane miles a year, and, you know, mostly in Queens. So, you know, there's a whole, you know, maintenance program, infrastructure repair and maintenance program. We've got 879 bridges for the first time in generations, as Ross would know. All of our bridges are in our state of good repair virtually. We've abolished basically the poor category of bridges, and that's a huge. That's thanks to $4 billion worth of investment that the mayor has done in his term in terms of putting his money where his mouth is, and we are in an enviable position versus other cities across the country and across the world in terms of having an infrastructure foundation like the one we have. So our streets are in good condition. We're spending a lot of time on that. Our bridges are in good condition. We're spending a lot of time on that. We're building out a bus rapid transit network that will include parts of Queens. We're working on that right now. You probably, I've been doing community board meetings up there. You may know that that's not always so easy, but we're doing everything we can. The congestion pricing program was really, was to deal with a congestion that was coming into our central business district, the busiest business district in the United States. And the only reason I'm saying that is that the revenues, all of the revenues associated with congestion pricing were to pay for mass transit system expansions in places like Queens, in boroughs like Queens, in boroughs like Brooklyn that don't have some parts of the network, and Staten Island that just don't have transit access. So what we're trying to do is build a new capacity as quickly as possible. We're not going to be able to get a new rail line out to Queens anytime soon, but we can get a bus rapid transit network out there.
Trust me, no one's looking for a new rail line out to
Okay.
Queens.
Thank you.
Let me jump in on that, though. I think that the question does raise an interesting question. Congestion pricing will come up again. Do you have any advice to those who have to think about it politically? What additional things or other things would you think would be helpful in getting a pricing scheme for streets passed in New York State?
Well, I think that one of the things that was really interesting, even though it didn't pass, we had a whole new conversation about how people get around the city of New York. It was really the first time people learned, that 98% of people that are coming into the central business district are coming in by transit. And so, and what the percentage of people that own cars, most people don't have cars in the city. So looking at those numbers, looking at how that went, I think is a really important piece. I think we need to continue that. I think we need to make it easier for people to understand also what the money is going to go for. The experience that we've had around the country, I worked for a firm and did a lot of work on helping localities pass ballot measures that provided money for transit projects. And the number one factor in getting those ballot measures passed was the public's belief that the money would go for a specific project and nothing could be, it could not be diverted in any way. So the public needs to know that if they support this program, they're going to get X, Y, Z projects that they are interested in seeing done. And I think that if they, again, highlighting the benefits of the program, highlighting who benefits, highlighting how people get around today, because I think there's a distorted view in terms of how New Yorkers get around town. So I think those are a couple of things to work on down the line.
Hi, I'm Hope Cohen. I'm with the new Center for Urban Innovation at RPA. That's the first time I'm officially using that tag. I was interested in the design manual about how things look, but my question is about how many things there are, particularly on the sidewalk, and what opportunities there are to clear away some sidewalk clutter. I mean, the classic example, of course, is parking signs and how confusing they can be and contradictory. And so I have one small bore question about the simplification of parking signs, but then the larger question of how many poles and mailboxes and bollards and all the stuff that's now kind of that over the years has sprouted across the sidewalks, making it in fact much harder for pedestrians to use the sidewalk for mobility.
Yeah, no, there's a a cacophony of activity and materials on the streets, and we are working on that. We've got 1.3 million signs on the streets of New York, so it's a lot of there's a lot of steel out there. And so we are taking a look at what we can do to remove redundant signs. We're working on a pilot program in that area right now, and also up our game in terms of the quality of the signs that are on there, on the streets of New York. I find it kind of appalling that when you take a look at the poles that are in the ground, it looks like, they should be used for sheep herders, to kind of keep the, to ring them, with some wire. They're really ugly, and other cities don't have that. So we're working to see what we can do to up our game in terms of the attractiveness of our streetscapes, and that's a really important part of it.
And less,
Yes,
compressed.
yes. I gotta go.
Oh, this will be the last question.
Sheldon Silberstein, bicycle commuter and writer on New York Transit history. Does the DOT, is it responsible for the placement of bike parking fixtures?
Yes.
then I have a couple of issues to raise. Are there guidelines as to where to place them? They should be placed where they're most likely to be used. That is, where there's some destination there.
A lot of it's driven on request basis.
I've seen them placed on a block, for example, where there was nothing but a parking lot. Another one, there was nothing but a blank brick wall with no doors, no stores. So I suggest they be placed in where they're likely to be used, where someone is going. And also, when they are placed, oftentimes they are usurped, I should say, by either building superintendents that have a propensity to lean their garbage against bike racks, or vendors who set up their carts or tables right next to them. Even on Hudson Street, a restaurant chained a large bench to a bike rack, so it couldn't be used. So I suggest that you put a yellow line around it indicating that space is for bikes and enforce it by ticketing. There are also other issues about their placement, such as whether they should be parallel or perpendicular to the curb and not too close together, or close to other places where bikes lock up. I think the issue of no parking signs was raised, as I believe I heard it said it was illegal to lock to them. Of course, that's somewhat ridiculous. But sometimes a bike rack is placed right next to that, so that the two clash, they interfere.
Yeah, well, we've got a great team of folks that go out to put there are sighting requirements that are out there, engineering requirements that are out there, and it's driven really, it's a request-driven program, and there's a tremendous number of requests that are out there right now as we're seeing the kinds of increases that we're seeing on bike commuting. We think that also the passage of the indoor bike legislation will help provide some additional places for people to park and park safely, and so we're really excited about that. But we're continuing to do whatever we can to up our game, both in terms of the quality of the racks that are out there and where they go. So thank you for your question.
Well, thank you.
Mr. Sadler, one more question?
Stay right here. No, that was the last question.
Okay, then I'll just go up and ask the commission myself.
Stay right here. I want to thank Commissioner Sadiq Khan for a very stimulating morning, and as we always do, thank you. Yeah, there's some applause. As we always do, we like to present to our. Can you wait 1 second, please? We always present to our speakers a product of the scholarship of this law school, and I'd like to present to Commissioner Sadiq Khan the book by my colleague Annette Gordon-Reed, The Hemmings of Monticello, which won the National Book Award and the Pulitzer Prize. So we're very proud of her and of this book, and we're very proud of this morning's talk. Thank you very much. Thank you. Our next breakfast in October will feature Robert Lamandry, Commissioner of the Department of Buildings, who is also having a major impact on the city. So we welcome you. We are also changed our method of notifying people. We do it now by email. So if you haven't given us your email address, please do, so that we can keep you on our mailing list. So thank you all for coming, and we will see you in October.